it so we can hear it again.
There you go.
Alright, you're good.
What do you want me to go back to where we met?
Yeah,
Yeah, sure.
yeah.
We met at the drugstore when I was a soda jerk. And he worked at the movies. He had just got back from being in the service, and I was still in high school, I guess. Or maybe it was about time I finished high school. And he would come by every night on the way to his work and get a pint of limeade, or he could have something to drink while he was working. And
Squeezed limeade.
I made fresh limeade. And anyway, Daddy wouldn't let him take me home because he was determined he would pick me up after I got off work. Or every other night I worked late, and every other day I got off early. But Daddy was so protective of his girls. Anyway, when we decided to get married, before we decided to get married, Daddy run Charles off and told him not to ever come back. So we got our marriage license in Graham a week before. You had to have a blood test back then too. We had to get the blood test, and then we went to Graham and got our marriage license. And
You couldn't do it in Jacksboro because
so
Papa
Daddy
was the county
he's
clerk.
a county clerk. I couldn't do it. I'm in his little apartment, and I had all the stuff put in it. I bought new sheets and dishes and.
In the bedroom suit.
No, I didn't have. It was a furnished apartment. It's a little bitty furnished apartment. No, the bedroom suit I had bought for my bedroom there at the Mom and Daddy's because I wanted a new bedroom suit, and so I bought me one. Anyway, a girl I worked with and a guy he worked with went with us, and I told Daddy I was spending the night with her. And of course I dressed in my saddle Oxfords and sweater and skirt, and went to her house, and then had my clothes at her house to wear. I had a suit and high heels and a little hat. You wore hats back then. And they picked me and Treva up, and the guy that he worked with, his name was, what was his name? Something Whitsitt. He's not even listening to me.
You, when you got married, who was the guy that you worked with?
They went with us to get married.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Anyway, we got in the car and started down the road toward Fort Worth. And we got to Springtown, and we decided we'd find a church there to get married at. And we found the church, and the preacher's house, of course, was right beside. Back then, the preacher's house was always right beside the church. And it was a Church of Christ, and we knocked on the door and asked him if he'd do the wedding, and he said he would. So we went in his living room and stood there in front of him, and he did the
deed.
He did the deed, and we paid him off. And
How much did it cost you?
well, I think we had a $10 bill, and he kept it all.
That's
He kept it all. I think that was about all the money we had. But
a lot of
anyway,
money.
we went on to Springtown. No, we went to Azle and met Ralph and Elizabeth and a bunch of her friends and kinfolks, and down there, that's where you could dance. And of course, Ralph and Charles, they could do the jitterbug. You wouldn't believe how they could do the jitterbug. And I didn't know how to dance hardly. I could just barely hold myself up. Charles taught me to dance. I never did dance in my life. But anyway, and it was so foggy you couldn't see over the hood of the car. We started back to Jacksboro, and it was really a bad weather night. And we got to the apartment, and we spent the night in the apartment then.
What happened when you told Papa?
And then we had to go tell him. So about lunch, we went out there, and sure enough, when we had stopped at the grocery store and wrote a check before we left. And the bread man was there, and he went to church where Mom and Daddy did. So the first thing he had to tell them when they got to church was that I had got married. So I didn't have to tell
Your
them.
mom's telling the story.
And
We're recording that.
he
Your mom is
we
telling
pulled
the
up in
story.
the driveway, and
We're
I was gonna
recording
get my clothes. And
it. Mhm.
Betty come out. I went in to get my clothes and stuff, and Betty come out and said, "Papa said for you to come in." And Charles said, "I'm not going in until he tells me I can come in." So he came out the car and invited us in for supper, and Mom had pork chops and black-eyed peas and
Yeah, they're good.
potatoes, and I don't know what else.
Mhm.
But she was such a good cook.
Yeah.
She always made a meal out of everything. And we
Okay.
got my clothes in. We went
Alright,
back to the apartment, and I got up the next Monday morning and went to my job, and I didn't have a job. They had hired someone to take my place. Evidently, they knew I was getting married and thought I was going to quit or something because I didn't have a job.
Huh.
So you get married and you're broke and you don't have a job.
And then,
Then Daddy, I think, quit his job and he came to Fort Worth and went to work for Tasty Bakeries, and we rented an apartment over on where the hospital is now, where Cook's is. It was on Pruitt Street. That street's not even there. The hospital's on top of the street now. And it was a big old, you didn't have apartment houses back then. You had, they took old houses and made apartments in them.
Mhm.
And it was a 2-story house, and the top story had a 1-bedroom, a 2-bedroom, and a 3-room. It wasn't 3-bedroom, it was just a 1-room. It was 3 rooms, but we got the 3-room, and the bedroom had been a porch or something, and it was closed in with windows and curtains. And then they had the little living room, and then we shared a bath. Back in them good old days, we paid $14 a week, and she wouldn't take the money by the month. She wanted it by the week, where she got that extra week's rent. And she was something else. I knew she was coming in my apartment where I wasn't there, but I laid some newspapers against the door one time to prove it, and sure enough, she come in there and unplugged my refrigerator. One time said it needed defrosting. Of course, she had a little freezer about 6 by 8. And I went to work down there at, I could walk and go down there. I went down to Renfro drugstore and went to work there, and the first thing they done was wanted me to ride the bus and go to the other side of town and work, so I didn't work there for about a week, and I went to Walgreens downtown then, and I went to work there, and I worked there until about 6 months, and I was pregnant with Larry, and you don't work there after you got pregnant. Back then, they fire you for that. So I worked there until then, and then we moved. Of course, Mom and Daddy wanted us to come back to Jacksboro to have the baby. And she first told us we could stay in the apartment. Before, she had said, there's no kids in the apartment, you know. And until I was right before time for the baby to be born, and she told me I couldn't be there after the baby was born, so we moved back to Jacksboro, and Daddy went to work in the oil field. He went to work on a truck outfit, raced about moving oil field equipment. And we stayed with Mom and Dad until Larry was 2 months old. And, Mom took me, I started having pains just as he left at 2 o'clock that afternoon, and I didn't tell anybody until later, and Mom drove me I drove myself to the hospital, but Mom went with me
Yeah.
because I knew I could drive.
Did she drive?
No, well, she drove some, but Daddy wouldn't hardly let her drive. He'd let all his kids drive, but he wouldn't let Mom drive.
Cause he's taking care of her.
No, he just, but anyway, I was 24 hours having him, and he weighed nearly 9 pounds. So that's the first one. And Daddy worked in the oil fields, and we moved into a little apartment. And of course, our first big purchase was a baby bed, which I think seemed like it cost nearly $100. Time you got the mattress and everything.
Wow.
He knows that nearly all of his passes are wobbly.
Yes.
I think we're good.
Well, anyway,